That's it, man. Game over, man. It's game over.
Oh, no tears, please. It's a waste of good suffering.
Fairly alarmed here.
Welcome to MOTN Reviews, that is Masters of the Nerdiverse Reviews, where we look into some of the shiniest cinematic supernovas of the Nerdiverse and some films that are not so brightly lit. Try saying that 5 times fast. You can find this podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. If you like what you're listening to, leave a like, leave a comment, and maybe subscribe. I think you'll like what's coming down the pipe going forward. I am extremely happy to welcome back to the show Beer Business Bureau's own Darren.
What's up, guys? What's up?
What's crack-a-lackin' everyone out there in TV land, as they would say. Were you a Nick at Night kid?
Yep, sure as hell was.
What was the one show that you remember like falling asleep to like every single time?
I think Clarissa Explains It All. That was on prime time at the time. What was a Nick at Night show?
It was all old shit. Like I remember like Green Acres for some reason sticks in my brain as falling asleep to. Yeah. I have no idea why.
Oh my god.
I have no idea why.
What was a Nick at Night show that I used to... I don't know why, for some reason, I keep wanting to say Clarissa Explains It All, but...
That's what's up, man.
I used to watch all that, actually.
Yeah.
Nick at Night.
All of that.
But,
that was what's up. And Hey Dude. Hey
yes,
Dude.
Yes.
Oh, we're dating ourselves, but I don't care.
Hey.
Those are good times.
Old age comes fine. With old age comes fine wine.
Yes. And in that wine are little particles.
Yeah, sulfites.
Of the sulfites that you're drinking, you don't care because you're sloshed. Oh, man. Speaking of having to be sloshed, let's talk about the film we're going to be reviewing this week.
We're going to be reviewing a cult classic, and I really put emphasis on cult classic because it actually was showcased at the Sundance Film Festival, I think, way back when.
Yes.
In 2000 or 2001. And it didn't catch on very well in theaters, obviously.
No, it didn't.
And
it was a bomb, wasn't it?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't released it wasn't widely released at the time. And then by the time I started picking up steam, like it was like people were over it. But it's a blessing and a half that it actually did bomb in theaters because it became a super well renowned movie.
This is one of the first DVD darlings, would you say, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
It just blew up, kind of like The Big Lebowski.
Yes,
same thing.
It's a DVD darling, whereas it's one of those things where it was so ahead of its time that. And I saw so much of other things in this movie.
Yep.
We're going to get into that. That are direct representations of this film, which was the first to do it.
Yep.
This film was debuted in 2001.
Yes, 2001.
Ooh, that was a beautiful year.
Yeah.
Directed by Richard Kelly. One of his only films, funny enough. He has a very short filmography.
Yeah.
And I find it very fascinating that I haven't seen his other films. But it makes me wonder, like, well, how could this guy not get work, even indie work, after this? And the film we're talking about is
Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko, guys.
And I do believe it was an independent film actually at the time. It was an independent film, which is why, of course, it was showcased at Sundance.
Right.
But I mean, this film, it's upon first look. You know, obviously, it's going to be confusing somewhat.
A little.
Actually, I wouldn't even say a little. It's somewhat confusing.
Yeah.
You know, but the more again, like, and the funny thing about it's just like The Big Lebowski. Like, as it ages, it's still
it teaches you things.
Yeah.
What was your first experience with this film?
My first experience with this film was actually, funny enough, was actually on Showtime.
Really?
Yeah.
That's cool.
Well after it had been released, like 2002, 2001. I was in middle school still. I was in middle school when it came out, but so when I first saw the film, I loved it immediately because it was dark. It was a menagerie of things in terms of its composition. I mean, it was intelligently written.
Yes.
Very intelligently written. And even though it had a star-studded cast, mostly star-studded cast, like, usually with that kind of stuff, they don't tend to do well, especially movies back then.
Right.
But the cast, they all gelled very well.
It's funny you mentioned the cast because I totally forgot that Maggie Gyllenhaal is in this film.
Yeah, his sister.
As his sister.
Yeah.
Which this movie surprised me a bunch. Like, I forgot so much about it as I was rewatching it again last night.
It takes meta to a level to a higher level, and it gives a new meaning. It really does.
Yes, definitely. Like, when I think about this film, when I first saw it, was during my college years. It was during the indie crawl, as it were, where you saw Primer for the first time, and you saw this, you saw The Big Lebowski, you know what I mean? Movies that just weren't on TV, you know, after a certain time. And back then, like now, I have the hardest time categorizing this movie. What exactly is it?
Donnie Darko. Okay, that's actually the funny thing about this movie. This movie was never really meant to be categorized in that way.
Yes,
and it was written that way actually, and it's on purpose. And that's why it was also ahead of its time. Because of that.
Absolutely.
But, and it's meant really to be more interpretive.
It's very interpretive. It gives me shades of Napoleon Dynamite in a weird way. It gives me shades of
I can see that. Yeah.
Of the Virgin Suicides. Yeah. It gives me feelings of Tim and Eric in a weird way. You know, what is it? Awesome
show, great job.
Awesome show, great job. Where you can feel the inspiration that these guys pulled from this movie. And the movie kind of defies explanation because it's how you interpret the events of the film that you create the genre for it.
But there is an actual narrative to it. There is a plot, and there is an ending, and there is an explanation to the ending, but I don't want to jump ahead.
That totally, and yes, that is important to mention that this isn't some hodgepodge of student film mishmash. There's a beginning, there's a middle, and an end, and it's a snake eating its own tail.
Yep.
And how you interpret and how you interpret it is pretty much based on how you're viewing it.
Right, and I don't typically like time travel movies. You know, with the exception of the first Terminator.
Yeah, Back to the Future.
Yeah, Back to the Future. You know, movies that are timeless.
Yeah,
but like this movie actually, it uses time travel when you first see it, you kind of think it uses it in a dumb way, like a dumbass way. But really, actually, it's using it in a way that you don't expect. And it basically gives you the answers to your face without you really realizing.
Yeah, it shadows the two sides of this coin. Is time travel, which is hard science fiction, and internal psychosis and horror, and both mask the other. They both hide each other.
Yep.
So, depending on where you're approaching it, this could be a coming of age film you can totally see that, and this all could be metaphorical.
Right.
It could be a hard science fiction film that unravels itself like an onion until the very end. Or it could be a film about psychological horror, and it could be a thriller in some weird ways, just based on the titular character's mental state from beginning, middle, and end.
It's a modular movie in that way. You don't get that until probably I guess near toward the end of the movie. Actually, you don't get that until the very end of the movie. And for that, and then on top of that, it's sort of there is an element of it that I don't really like too much, in that it tries to be really suspenseful,
right?
And
it doesn't wear that hat well.
No, it doesn't. But I'm also glad that it doesn't do that very well, because it does add just another level of layer of
ambiguity to it, like.
It's a weird movie. Even Jake Gyllenhaal himself said, even to this day, he says he doesn't understand the movie.
Yeah, I was reading this funny quote between him and Seth Rogen, who sneaks his way into this movie.
Yeah,
his first film, he got his SAG card in this movie.
Yeah,
and his first line was, "I like your boobs."
Yeah,
funny enough.
Exactly.
I read that. I was like, "This is hilarious." I didn't even know he was in this movie.
Yeah.
And when I was watching this movie, and as you said, it kind of builds you up to what exactly is happening. In a funny way, it kind of reminds me of From Software's Bloodborne, where it's kind of a trip down madman's knowledge.
Okay, I haven't played that game,
Okay.
but yeah.
Yeah, but what Madman's knowledge is just because it kind of feeds back into the film, is that you get you get health orbs, you get experience orbs, you get Madman's knowledge. The more Madman's knowledge you get in the game, the harder the bosses get, and the more the world shows you.
Interesting.
The more you understand what's happening, the more you start to accept what's happening, and it changes your reality.
I can see that. I can totally see that. You're talking with Donnie himself, right?
Donnie himself.
Yeah, okay.
Depending on how you want to approach it, the further he digs into what's happening, if anything's happening, it either furthers his psychosis,
right,
or furthers his understanding of reality in the universe and time travel. And the deeper he goes down that rabbit hole, the more he finds himself in trouble.
Yeah.
One way or another. And that's brilliant to me because it leaves it up to you. And I think the therapy sessions also blur that. Because he has two different types. They're for both. He has the therapy sessions with the therapist, and he has the almost TED Talks with his teacher about the science fiction side of it. And they're both fulfilling the same for both.
Noah Weil, I think is his name.
Yes.
Noah Weil, yeah.
Wasn't he on like one of those medical shows for a while?
Yep.
Was it Grey's Anatomy or was it ER?
I think it was Grey's Anatomy.
I got to start knowing this stuff before I talk about it. Yeah. But let's do this. Let's break it down by character.
Sure. That's the best way to do it, actually.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So we've already talked about him a little bit. Let's talk about the titular character, Jake Gyllenhaal's Donnie Darko. What is that, a superhero name?
Yeah, exactly. Yes, I figured you were gonna. Who was it that said that?
It was his.
It was Jenna Malone who said that.
It was Jenna Malone.
Gretchen.
There we go. Yes. Yeah. He's like, how do you not know I'm a superhero? And then it adds another weird layer. Like,
no, he says, how do you know I'm not?
Exactly. How do you know I'm not? And this character has such a cool arc to me, to where he's just kind of like a shithead little brother. And it's kind of from a understandable place if you're an outsider.
Right.
He's a typical outsider when it first starts. He's not totally isolated because he has a squad and people respond to him, but at the same time, he's still not the cool kids. But in this movie, there's not really cool kids, which is also very smart.
It's not because it's not cookie cutter.
Yes,
it's not the typical cookie cutter high school relationships. That you see. The
only stereotypes that are really in the film that are unredeemable are the bullies. Especially, and they're not notorious bullies like from our last film, It, which is funny because the mom was reading Stephen King's It in the intro of the movie, which I didn't plan.
Yeah,
which I thought was pretty cool. I was like, what? Am I in the Matrix? But Jake Gyllenhaal once again sold me like this guy can do whatever he wants, acting wise. And how do you feel about like his character arc as it developed through the film, without any major spoilers or anything?
I thought it was brilliant. I thought that I'm jumping ahead again. I thought that his exploration of not just his own the world around him, but his own psychosis.
Yes.
And the next character we have to talk about, the next character we have to talk about, it has to be Frank, but
that's perfectly fine.
The very next character, because they are intertwined, and they're intertwined in a very strange way.
And I have questions about that because it's not fully explained.
Oh yeah,
what their true connection is.
Okay,
and I would love an explanation on that because even I'm still trying to work that out.
Be prepared because it's going to get pretty weird.
That's awesome. I love it. So,
but in terms of his story arc, Donnie is not only, he's both, and this is where it's really interesting, he's both his own hero and his own villain. Exactly. And like he's his own worst enemy in this movie. But that he's his own worst enemy, but then he becomes a savior at the same time. Yes.
He has a martyr. He becomes, not to give too much away, he has a sacrifice moment that he just accepts. And it's a perfect testament to his fully understanding of what's going on. Yeah. And what needs to go on. And because his whole point was, I had to know what's the whole point of all this? Right. And the point was for the point to be the point. And once he kind of got that, you have this weird moment where, I don't want to jump too far ahead, but he has a cathartic moment that's wordless, but you understand. And I think that was very well acted.
Yeah.
Because they could have easily blown it up with a full epilogue on him making that decision and making it bloated.
Right.
But no, they made it not even 30 seconds. It was very quick and it was very poignant, I think.
Right. And it's really hard to talk about spoilers with this movie because, like, do
you want to just go into it? I mean,
no,
it's almost an over 20-year movie at this point.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. So one of the things that really stood out to me about Donnie is especially like, and okay, and one of the things that stood out to me about Donnie was Frank. And when I was first watching this movie, I was thinking that. Well, and it's natural things, but that you were thinking that Frank was what it didn't matter whether he was what you thought he was an imaginary character or not.
Right.
You were literally thinking that he's the polar opposite, or if not the polar opposite, a version of Donnie.
Yeah, I thought it was Donnie's id.
Yeah, is that right? Either an alter ego or his id talking to him.
Yes,
his primal baser
instinct kind of.
But then you really start to see that it's not the case, and it becomes solidified when you find out who Frank really is.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, and then it turns from it being a psycho thriller to a causal loop kind of thing.
Yes, absolutely.
and then it's just it's like, what the fuck?
It frustrates you immediately because the fan canon you had going on in your head is wrong.
Right.
Right.
Right. But then with Donnie, and this is the last I'm going to say about Donnie, I think honestly things really started to his story arc really started to hit its peak when the old lady
whispered in his ear.
Yeah, and told him what she said. Then he told his therapist. Now, it's no brainer that he would tell his therapist that.
Yeah,
but what he equated what she said, and I'm just gonna spoil it. What she said to him was, "Everyone dies alone."
Yeah, all living creatures on this earth.
All living creatures die alone.
Yeah,
and the way what he relates that to is his cat, going on to die.
Yeah,
and really, if you weren't paying attention, that actually is a foreboding.
Oh yeah, it's a very big portent,
right,
of what's to come.
Yeah,
you know what I mean.
And so, just leaving that alone for a side, Frank is probably the least important, but also the most important character here.
He's kind of the low key catalyst, of everything, because that's where I get sideways. Because there's a certain stage in the story where he becomes tangible and is no longer a fictional character. And we'll get to what's really solidifies this later.
Right.
I would say during the Gretchen story arc.
Right.
But where I'm confused is that they were communicating with each other through temporal space. But how did Frank get involved in the understanding of temporal space without the aid of Mother Death or Grandma Death? Because opening that up to him, like how did he become, So
this is where it gets kind of weird. Where it adds another layer, actually.
Yeah.
So it is a temporal loop. However, there's also alternate dimensions involved in this as well.
Right.
So with Frank, and as you know, the multiverse theory, and I think they do touch on that in the.
You like multiverses, right?
Yeah. So Frank wasn't the Frank that
existed in his world.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
However, the events of what he did to Frank still happen. Maybe not in the same order. Of course not, because
the whole tinging, the moment where he's in the mirror and he's really diving into his own psychosis,
right,
or his own knowledge. He does the ting on Frank's eye,
right,
and it doesn't, and it's not explained immediately what happens after that point. But then it is foreshadowed in the theater, and then once again explained in Frank's. I wouldn't say final moment, but his leading up to final moment.
Yeah. So Frank's appearance quite literally is he is a catalyst, but it's okay. So the way it was explained to me, is that that's not Frank's ghost appearing to him. It's not Frank's spirit. It literally is another Frank from another universe, and even though like because time is relative. Like time is one big bar.
Exactly.
Especially across multiple universes.
It's a spider's web.
So the way it was explained to me is that is Donnie's conscience in another universe. Yeah. That's actually telling him. So in a way, really, it kind of is Donnie himself telling himself this is what's going to happen.
Through another vessel, which is Frank. Right.
And so, of course, like, going back to what was said to Donnie about, all living things die alone.
And that's what spurred his psychosis / enlightenment.
Right. That led him to believe that if that's the case, then somehow I need to stop that. Exactly. And if you remember, there's a plane that crashes into the house.
Yeah, which I would say is the blatant catalyst of the film. Is the accident in the home.
It hides in plain sight, though. Exactly. Because it happens in the beginning of the movie.
Yes. Yeah. It's the bookend.
Yeah, exactly. This movie's written brilliantly that they give you the answers before you know that they're actually answers to questions that you never had.
This movie in itself is kind of a delve into Madman's knowledge, where they lay out the end of the movie at the beginning, and they explain the beginning of the movie at the end. So it is a causality loop where you can watch this movie all over again, and technically it will be its own sequel.
Right. Right. Exactly.
Because now you're entering, it's like a new game plus.
Right.
You know what I mean?
And unfortunately, there was a sequel with his sister, but his little sister.
We don't talk. Did that actually become made? Was that?
Yeah, that was made. It's called S. Darko.
Oh yeah, I've totally forgot about that. Yeah, as did the world. I'm like mad dogging my mic right now. Jeez.
I mean, no offense to Leah. What's her name?
The actress or the director?
The girl. Lee something. I forget her name.
Was it the same little girl? Or was it a new actress?
Same little girl.
They aged her out.
That's pretty cool. So like she was a teenager by this point. She was 18 years old.
Fair enough.
Anyway, I don't want to talk about that shit.
Yeah, that's for another podcast for another day.
Not ever, but
in another multiverse.
Yeah, in another universe, not this one.
Not this one.
But yeah, so going back to multiverse. Well, no, not even multiverses anymore.
Going back to Frank.
Going back to Frank. So Frank serves as Donnie's conscience, even though it actually did happen. But even though that Frank wasn't technically real, he was real. Yes, but just in different.
He's a Splinter universe version of Frank, which is honestly being piloted by a different version of Donnie in a weird sense. Yeah. To give him the information he needs to save the universe that he's currently in. Right. Sort of like a spirit guide in a weird way. But there's moments where Frank is talking to Donnie as if he's talking to himself. And that's a weird little Easter egg if you're paying attention. Yeah. You know what I mean? They even have almost the same verbal cadence. Right. Exactly. You know what I mean? There's little touches like that. Yeah. And what threw me off with Frank is the theater scene where, why are you wearing that silly, what is it, human suit?
Yeah. No, he says, why are you wearing that stupid bunny suit? Yeah. And and then Frank responds, why are you wearing that stupid man suit?
Exactly. And he takes it off and he's this 90s looking dude with earrings and everything, and he has this eye, the only gore in the film.
He tells him to take it off.
He says just take it off. Yeah, and he removes it, and he's doing his best, Max Sydow kind of. The eyes go first and the head follows. Turn, right. And it's really the only gore in the movie is his eyes like totally gouged out. Yeah, and he's like, "I'm sorry." I think that's what he says. And that also goes into like the main climax of the movie. But let's double back a little bit because we actually talked about the two most complicated characters in the film. So I do want to kind of go into some of the more smaller but important characters, like the other Darkos, his family, which have a very interesting role in this film. And I want to kind of start in a different direction. I want to start with his father, who had a weird, who played the most natural father I've ever seen in a movie, honestly, because he's not dejected, but he is.
Right.
He's kind of just, his wife is the head of the house.
Of course.
But he's still kind of like that cool dad. He's like, oh, he flipped her off. That's funny.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah. Not okay, I'm sorry. I had to segue. My favorite part is when when Donnie gets to the principal's office and and he tells and then the principal asks, hey, what exactly did you say to Miss Farmer? And then she's like, I'll tell you what he said. He told me to shove I forget the name of
the book. He said the life cycle of my aliens.
And his dad
was like,
his dad straight up just let off this yelp.
And his mom didn't even flinch. And that's another thing about his mom. I do want to talk about that scene that came before that, because I think it's one of the best scenes in the film.
Oh yes.
The classroom scene where what was her name?
Miss Farmer.
Miss Farmer had this, and it's another thing. And we're going to go into this more about these smaller characters. This film is really about a moment in the 80s where children were being numbed to reality via mindless understandings of black and white, right and wrong, apathy.
It's also important to note
it's super strong in this movie.
It's also important to note that where this takes place is actually in a small town.
Yes. Yeah. And that's another thing I picked up. It's a very Cleaver-esque Americana universe. It's self-contained.
Yep.
Nothing is happening outside of this neighborhood.
Yep.
You know what I mean? They're obviously rich, or at least well off, and everything is. And that's where I get the kind of like the highbrow Napoleon Dynamite feel, to where everything is so sanitized and perfect, but it's not. And that's where the ending theme comes in, where everything is damaged on the other side of that coin. And it's just moments like the recital where it's just it's perfectly disturbing. Yeah. Because it's so perfect. But to go back to that classroom scene, they're giving these weird scenarios where it's either black or white. Right. It's fear or love.
Right. Yes, exactly.
And Donnie has the most poignant moment in the film where he's like, life doesn't work that way. You can't work off these polar opposites. And she's just not hearing it. Like, it's scary like that, and it's so telling to time now. You know what I mean? That if someone has an ideal in their brain, there's just no way to burn through it, even with the amount of even with knowledge and a form of comprehension and understanding. And he's trying to explain to her, and Donnie's a little off kilter.
Of course,
he could have handled it differently, but what he's saying is absolutely right. Like, situations in life can't be bottled in black or white.
Right. Because a lot of this shit has nothing to do with fear or love.
Exactly.
It's common fucking sense.
It's common sense. Who cares if you found a wallet and you gave back the wallet but you kept the money? What does it have to do with fear or love? Right. That's a decision. Right. And she's just like, well, if you don't answer this question, I'm going to send you to the office. He's like, you're not listening to me. Like, why are you doing this to us? You're ruining these children. Yeah. And that's kind of goes into where he just had it and told her to shove the life cycle up her ass. And this teacher is kind of the villain of if this movie had a villain,
she'd be the closest thing to it, but she's
not a villain.
She's just a mindless,
she's a embodiment of the problem. And her polar opposite in this film is Drew Barrymore. It was another secret.
Exactly.
And I love Drew Barrymore. It also reminded me why I love Drew Barrymore. Oh man, she's so dreamy. But
she understood Donnie on a different level, but she didn't. I felt her character was a little underserved.
It was very underserved because she had a purpose that she fulfilled, but that's it. Yeah, she had no meat to her. She had meat to her personality because it's Drew, and Drew kind of put a little bit of herself into it. Right. But the character didn't have a lot to do outside of her purpose, which was to open his mind. Right. You know what I mean?
Which happens when you have all those stars like that.
Exactly. Right. They will do what they got. They're going to hook it up. But the parents, like the mother, is this strangely stoic character throughout the entire film. Even at the end, she's strangely stoic. Everyone is going through it, and she's just smoking a cigarette, just dealing with it.
Almost kind of like she knew that he was going to die some way. some way, somehow.
Yes. And that's another thing. Like, if you understand the system, then you can kind of see beyond the system. You know what I'm saying? Even on a very internal instinct level.
Yep.
Kind of like Gretchen. But we'll get to Gretchen. And the mother just was a very strange character for me because she was the father to where she was standoffish, but she wasn't apathetic.
Right.
So she was very off-putting. And it felt like parents. Like, these felt like little brothers and little sisters and older sisters, and how they protected their little brothers. And that's where I kind of want to go into Maggie Gyllenhaal's character, the sister, Sister Darko, who could have had more to do, but she had just enough.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
She had just enough.
I do feel like they balanced them out. Because, I mean, it's not about Maggie anyway.
Right.
It's about Jake.
It's about Donnie,
yeah,
right?
It's about Donnie, yeah.
And even his little sister had stuff to do, right? So everybody had their time to shine. It was almost a perfect ensemble film because there wasn't a character wasted. Even the little I want to say Japanese Chinese girl who had her own weird story arc.
Damn it, Shrita.
Yeah,
Shrita. Yeah,
Shrita.
Who's actually pretty successful on TV these days.
That's cool. What is she in? I don't recognize her or anything.
Last thing, I mean, I haven't watched TV in a while, but she was on a sitcom. Not
cool.
Too long ago,
that's cool, man.
On a channel or an NBC, I think.
Yeah, she had her own little weird story arc, and that goes into the school with the weird bullies who Seth Rogen and his buddy with the knife.
Yeah,
who were just assholes for no reason, and not necessarily. There's a point where he kind of goes too far.
Yeah,
and there's a point where he goes really too far, but. They don't seem menacing up until that point, which is kind of a problem for me, weirdly enough. They just seem like to be just asshole smoking. There's a part, cause in the film, there's a section where they do this really good one shot, where it's a tracking shot through the school.
Yeah.
And I thought that was very, Virgin Suicides, and especially with the music going. It was a very cool intro to this existence. And you see one of these guys like doing a bump in front of a teacher who's watching, who doesn't say anything.
Yeah.
He doesn't wring him by his neck, you slacker, and throws him in. No, he just lets him do it. And you kind of get the entire ecosystem of what Donnie has to deal with and how he kind of sees it.
Well, okay. And this is where I connect with Donnie Darko a lot. Because that was a private school he went to.
Yes. It was a private school.
I went to private school, and I can tell you, maybe not the drugs so much, but that sort of mentality is there. Like,
wow,
teachers who work in private schools are extremely frustrated.
Yeah,
but they're collecting the fucking check, and so a lot of times, like when it comes to teaching these children who are spoiled as shit, if they can, I had a teacher once tell me, if I can get one or two kids to learn something, I don't really give a shit.
Yeah, because if you fight too hard, you lose your job.
Right.
But if you don't fight at all, then you lose your job. Yeah. Right?
Exactly.
So it's like, you have to kind of triage the situation. I can get two kids to actually, the Drew Barrymore character, she was extremely frustrated in this film.
Yep.
Because there were kids trying to learn, but the system around it was so homogenized that she was just too radical.
Yep.
And even what she was teaching wasn't insanely radical. Right. But it was a testament to the strictness of the mind state, not the school, but the mind state. And that goes back to the quote unquote antagonist of the film, which was, the teacher.
Yeah.
Slash supermom. Yeah. Slash dance instructor. Busybody.
And just to be fair, she wasn't inherently an antagonist, but she was just annoying as shit.
Yes.
So she was the closest thing to an antagonist.
And that's why I'm having a hard time explaining is that she's not a villain. No. She's not twirling her mustache, and she's not the reason for the problem.
But she's part of the problem.
She's part of the systemic problem.
Yeah, she's part of it. She's a cheerleader for it, basically.
Exactly. She's the bard, as it were.
Right.
And people listen to her. And that kind of makes me want to go into the Patrick Swayze character. The life coach, as it were, which was a lot of where the Tim McErick love came from me, because it reminds me a lot of their Cinco product commercials, which are hilarious. But talk about brighter the picture, the darker the negative with that guy. And he doesn't show up a lot in the film. He's very sparse until the major blow up.
Yeah.
And that's the
In the
auditorium
scene, yeah.
where Donnie kind of just rips him. And what's funny is Donnie's always during this film he's shown to be extremely intellectual. He's a high level thinker, but he wasn't really trying to outthink this guy. He was just trying to rustle him in a weird way.
He was trying to get him to see the flaws of what this
he was
shit
doing,
but this frontal lobe thinking that he was promoting. That's exactly what the shit was. Like,
hey kid, you want people to stop beating up on you? How about you go lift some weights? Learn some karate, and next time some asshole tries to dunk your hair in the toilet, you kick him in the balls.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, you worried about your sister not being overweight? Why don't you tell her to put down the Twinkies and go and join what is it, like recreational soccer or something like that? He kept it real on all three levels.
Oh man!
And all Patrick can do is like, this is sad. He's just so afraid. He's terrified up there. He's like, you're just not listening, dude. Like, I think you're the fucking Antichrist.
Yeah.
I was like, that's crazy, dude.
And okay, and that's where that little narrative also takes an interesting turn, because if you do, this is how you can interpret this as well. Like, basically, Donnie was right, and
Donnie was absolutely right.
And it's meta because what he was promoting was basically the death of people in terms of personality.
Yeah.
Making them all think the same exact shit. And so Donnie, and again, you can interpret this in many different ways. Donnie was I guess you can call him Jesus Christ. Yeah. Because he was sending the new message. Yes. But then because of, science fiction. Because
of the world, they know not what they do.
Right.
He was shunned as a outsider.
Right.
And shunned as crazy. And that's another thing that fascinates me about this movie. It made me stay up a little bit late last night thinking about what is actual insanity versus the reality that you perceive. You know what I mean? And it makes you really think. This movie, and that's one thing I love about movies like this, is it makes you think outside of the movie, and it makes you contemplate actual things that may make you sound a little crazy. You know what I mean? And characters like the Patrick Swayze character, who we had later find out is kind of the most despicable man of the film.
Oh yeah.
And then you have the blindest sheep of the teacher who still believes that he's pure of heart.
Right.
Outside of mountains of evidence.
Yeah.
And that's just a testament to the world. You know what I mean? It doesn't want its idea of perfection tainted, even if it is a pure taint.
Right.
It will rather accept nonsense than accept the truth.
Right.
And that's another weird through line story about this movie, is Donnie's truth reality, or is it reality because he's seeing it that way?
Right.
Because it's all told from his perspective.
Exactly.
And then it makes you contemplate, like, was it time travel? Was it his moment? Was it moments before death?
And that's the ambiguity of this that
that's
continues.
what I love about it.
You can interpret it in a whole bunch of different ways. But one thing is certain with this movie is that whether or not Donnie really did time travel, whether he really did, guide himself or not.
Yeah.
However that happened, like, Donnie had to go.
Donnie had to go, yeah,
because he's the hero and the antagonist of his own story, because he was the one upsetting the balance of everything
through living.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he became the true fire starter, literally and figuratively, of the film immediately after the jet engine fell out the sky.
Right.
And before we go into the grand scheme of the film, I do want to talk about Gretchen a little bit and her baby machine, which I think was one of the most fascinating things in the world.
Oh my God!
So Gretchen, I wouldn't call her a love interest because she has stuff to do, and I don't like the term love interest in films because it belittles the actress who's in that role, or actor for that matter. But Gretchen is this weird counterweight to his spiraling out of control up until the very end of the film.
Yep.
The absolute end of the film, where she's still a counterweight to the family. And Gretchen, played by
Jenna Malone.
Jenna Malone, who would go on to have a very good career, funny enough, which is cool. A lot of stars came from this movie. Started as his funky balance. Like, even when she was introduced to the class, which is one of the most cringeworthy things I can imagine in high school. Sit next to the guy you think is the cutest, right?
Oh yeah, yeah. Right.
It's such a rough moment. Like, this is my first day of school. Put me on the fucking spot. But it works out. It works out for him, and he starts to actually confide in her. He tells her, like, I'm seeing shit.
Yeah.
And I don't know how to deal with this. And she kind of woosaws him down every single time.
Yeah.
And I liked her as a character because she has this weird backstory where her mom is being hunted by her stepfather, who tried to kill her and got away. Yeah, and he's like, and it's like a horror film within all this is going on. Yeah, and you're like, wait, what? Yeah, we have to change our names to everything. Yeah, and that
she said he stabbed her like something. I forget how many times.
4 times in the chest.
Yeah, 4 times in the chest. Yeah,
and they don't know where he is, so we had to move.
Yeah.
And it made me think, like, I thought this was a cool name. And it made me think, is Gretchen like Mother Death waiting on Donnie's note from the future kind of thing?
No.
It jacked me up a little bit.
Gretchen, she does quite literally serve the purpose of being the counter, the actual balance for
yes.
Donnie.
Mm-hmm.
Now, again, like, when she was taken away, like, Donnie obviously became unhinged,
very much unhinged.
So, and looking at, but let's not go into that. But no, Gretchen, we'll get into that later. Gretchen quite literally she had a purpose to serve, and she served it.
Yeah,
up until her death.
Up until her death, which is the kind of the climax of the film, the party.
If anything extra that Gretchen was, she was the epiphany for him.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. She was
part of the epiphany.
She was clarity. She was the clarity past the knowledge. Yeah. Right? Mm-hmm. It was like he will learn this heavy stuff about kind of like, and then you got into the CG, which was weird.
Oh yeah.
The weird liquid trail of temporal space that you're destined to go down, and you can choose not to follow that temporal path if you want to, but then you're messing with the balance of time and space or something like that. Right. And so he would come to her with all this craziness, and she would just be like, relax, have a seat, and even during the assault on Patrick Swayze's house, right, he still had an alibi, which I thought was pretty cool. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. He still would have gotten away with it if he would have defied fate. But then again, we all see what happens when you defy fate.
Of course.
So how do you feel she fits as one of the more major, not protagonists, but kind of functions in the film?
You mean just in terms of what? Just in terms of like her overall
worth and importance of the film?
Well, I'd say she's pretty damn important.
Yeah.
Because, honestly, I don't think Donnie was actually crazy.
No,
I don't think he was crazy. What I think, and this is just from his guys.
Yeah,
he wasn't crazy, but everyone else did. Everyone else did think that, or just troubled in some way.
He was troubled.
What Gretchen was, like, quite literally, Gretchen was his way of realizing that he actually is pretty normal underneath all that rage and angst.
Yeah,
with the world coming down on him.
Yeah,
that he could find somebody that he can actually find that's not like the rest of everyone else. And she was an outsider too,
right?
So like, and it makes sense.
They were freaking frack, almost in different perspectives,
right?
And I totally get that. Where she balanced, like, she's definitely balanced him out in that sense. I want to talk,
but it was never meant to last.
And that's the whole point of the whole point of the movie, is the finite. You're giving a clock at the very beginning of the movie. Right. I don't know the full numerical breakdown, but you're giving a clock, which is also feeds into that narrative as well.
Oh, I should know this. It's
like 27 days.
I think it was 13 days actually.
13, I don't even want to butcher it. Yeah. I will butcher it. The last character I wanted to talk about was Ma Death. Mm-hmm. And what was she looking for? Was she looking for the note that he signed at the very end of the film?
Actually, that's a question I've been asking. I've been trying to figure out. That's one thing I don't know.
Because if she's let's say, because her story is that she was a teacher at the school many years ago. And she had an epiphany one day and wrote the book that kind of spearheads his dementia, his psychosis / his awakening of knowledge. And she mastered time travel, apparently. And she became reclusive and thus started her dementia of going back and forth to her mailbox looking for something. And what it is, we don't know. It's never fully explained. But Donnie Darko does create a letter to her, which we never know the contents of, that he's going to put in her mailbox for her.
Okay, so I want to say that, but at the same time, I don't know, because at that point in time when he wrote the letter, I don't remember if he didn't put it in her mail. No, she died. I remember she passed away in the movie.
She passed away towards the end of the film, right?
So I don't remember.
He doesn't physically put it in the box.
He doesn't,
because that's when Gretchen passes away.
Right, exactly. So
near the end of the film,
in order for that to be the case, their paths would have had to cross another time.
But then again, we're also dealing with multiple realities. So there could be the reality where he did put it in her mailbox, and that's what she's waiting for.
Okay, yeah, that's also true as well. And of course, her mind is
completely fried.
Yeah.
So all she knows to do is wait for the note that is predestined to eventually appear to her death, which never comes. But that was her own understanding of how all this works. She had her own Frank, who could have been Donnie, for that matter, haunting her since the beginning. And her brain being so fried, she just never recognized him because she's just gone.
Right.
So that was my kind of headcanon theory, that the letter he wrote was what she's been waiting for this whole time, and why she spoke to him to put him down this path.
Right.
To send her the letter, thus closing the causality loop.
Right.
She didn't have to talk to him.
I mean, that's one part. That would make some sense.
Right.
Because him hearing her say that
set him down the path.
Yeah, set him down the path. The book is him reading the book is what kept him on the path, and then Gretchen dying
is what really solidified his walk to martyrdom.
Yeah.
Him watching the end of the world.
Yeah.
And I do want to kind of bookend this podcast with a beginning, middle, and end explanation. So at the beginning of the film, we're introduced to the family. We're introduced to the school, and the temporal event happens. A jet engine falls out the sky.
Yes.
But that night he's visited in a certain way by Frank to leave his house for some reason.
Right.
Technically saving his life and kickstarting this whole thing.
Yeah.
And that's where you get into the jet engine falling, in him becoming a weird celebrity, so to speak.
Because it was supposed to fall. It fell on his room.
It fell on his room.
Only on his room.
Yeah. It wouldn't have affected anyone else in the house.
Exactly.
And then that started him on the why. And then we go into the therapy sessions, which open up a whole nother can of worms on his visits from Frank. Because it's Frank that's fueling him to learn more and more, and finding him to time travel, which takes him down the road to find about Miss Sparrow.
Right.
And
that's her name, Sparrow.
And towards the middle of the film, it's him acting out, him vandalizing the school,
I saw it.
I'm not crazy. I'm not crazy. Him kind of going through the motions of getting a better understanding of what's happening.
Yeah.
And then I'm leapfrogging because I want to kind of do bookends. And then the end where it's the party. And they don't say it right out, but he loses his virginity to, or he makes love to Gretchen. It's not necessarily pointed one way or another, but anywho, that's the impression it gave.
I mean, it's obvious.
It's obvious, right?
It's pretty obvious.
It was, and in that moment of love was also a moment of fear, which is funny,
right?
Which is reversed, because the teenagers take it to a whole nother level. Because they're getting blamed, not the teenagers, but the bullies take it to a whole nother level because they're being blamed for all the arson that's going on the bookends, the periphery of the movie.
Yeah.
And a car careens out of nowhere, funny enough, and kills Gretchen.
Yeah.
And who's behind the wheel of the car?
It's Frank.
It's Frank, real life
Bunny
Frank.
suit. Yep.
In his bunny suit that he's, for some reason, been working on and designed himself, which is very telling.
Right.
And Frank isn't this omnipotent time traveler. He's just some kid.
Right.
Some shithead. And Donnie kills him, does he? Right? He takes his dad's gun that he picks up from towards the center of the film and kills him. And now police are out, and he told the kid to go tell everyone what's going on because it doesn't matter because the world's going to end.
Right.
And Donnie is resolved in the fact that if I can stop this, if I can help me explain that, the end. It's a little tough.
So by him telling the little kid that, he's basically, he's telling that because basically he's saying it doesn't matter
at this point
what the hell happens because this shit's going to keep happening over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
how do I break this cycle?
Once he saw that it was inevitable for him to shoot Frank, because all roads led to him always having to kill him.
Yes, to save the world.
What.
Yeah,
like he was always going to have to kill Frank one way or another.
Right.
Whether it was Gretchen, whether it was whoever, and whoever knows how many multiverses where he had to kill.
He had to kill this version of Frank.
So he, in some way, he actually, well, I guess understanding time travel through Sparrow's book was banned. Right. He understood that since this causal loop is never going to end, maybe that's exactly why maybe it's myself, Frank, telling myself to stay alive so that I have some sort of existence. But I know that should not be the case.
But Frank as he exists now, they paint him in a very weird kind of mood, almost to where he's almost like depressed,
right?
Or even, I hate to say, suicidal in a weird way. Especially towards the end of the film, where they're doing the kind of retrospectives on these people's lives on that fateful night. Is it during that fateful night?
You're talking about when he dies and it shows like a montage.
All around me are familiar faces.
Yeah. Frank, well, to me personally, Frank just looked, okay, that scene right there is important because what that was showing really is that Donnie was dead.
Yeah,
of course, and pretty much everything, like all of time, has literally changed. Like a part of their heads
retained weirdly retained what happened,
right,
and felt the weight of that temporal reversal,
right, exactly.
And they were woken out of their sleep because they were the major points of what was going on in between the past and the present,
right.
And now the possible future. Right, in their present, which is his past.
And if you notice, like you were saying earlier about the mom not being emotional,
because she knew.
Well,
she had to.
I mean, she knew that he was going to die.
Yeah,
but in terms of now, it's kind of hard to tell like whether or not his family. Well, of course, if his family is grieving because they lost.
They do the rundown where his sister's crying, the baby's crying, the father is holding it together, and his mom is just sitting on leaning against a tree, smoking, dealing with it. Yeah. And it makes you think, like, does she have some kind of inside job? Because she knew Gretchen. But then again, how would she know Gretchen? She acknowledges Gretchen because Gretchen acknowledges her. Right. But they shouldn't know each other even in the contents of the possible future that would have happened. It's very funky. Like, they have a moment together.
Yeah, you're right. I think that there is a director's cut of the movie that I haven't seen.
Actually. So they shouldn't have any kind of even temporal connection. Right. Because Donnie was aggressively adherent to his mother. Mm-hmm. For reasons, he could be just a moody teenager, or she's always in his business. It's never really explained. Mm-hmm. But he was always very aggressive with his mom. And there's no reason why he would even introduce Gretchen to him. Because during this month that it was, him and Gretchen were going steady. And,
she knocks on the door, I believe. Or am I mistaken?
It was at the party. Gretchen knocks on the door at the party. And she's freaked out because their house is jacked up and her mom is missing. Right. And they never explained that. You don't know what happened. It's like a horror movie's happening at the same time that this film is happening. Yeah. And it's very unsettling.
I think that was just. I think that was just to add a little more to the plot. I don't really think.
I thought that was fascinating. Like, just something else going on
Right.
that we'll never know. You know, like
Right.
while you're standing on the bridge, Mortal Kombat's happening over there, but you don't know.
Right. I mean, it could possibly be. I mean, the father probably could have found them. I mean,
Her mom could have got drunk and just tore the house up because obviously.
Probably, yeah.
But who knows? We don't know. It's never.
I mean, you
explained.
assume that it's the father.
It's the father, and the worst case scenarios happened.
Yeah.
And the family died that night. Technically.
Yeah. It could be that. I mean, again, I the way I took it, it was just kind of filler a little bit.
It was an excuse for her to be in an emotional state.
Yeah.
For
sort
her
of
to finally give herself to Donnie and kind of complete their circle.
Yeah, it's kind of a plot device.
It's a very big plot device, but I just found it fascinating that there's a low key, like Halloween was happening down the street, and we don't know
right
how that ended up.
So yeah, going back to what we were saying before about the montage of all the characters.
Yeah, Mad World.
Yeah, that so. What were we saying before that?
Oh, we were talking about his acceptance of his martyrdom.
Yes. Yeah. So again, like Donnie accepted that he had to die.
Yeah.
The reason why he accepted it is because of it was the whole causal loop thing. This shit's gonna keep happening over and over again, and he knew that honestly, like if he didn't, like whether he knew that the pain would keep coming over and over again for everyone in his family,
right?
Not just him.
Not just him.
Regardless of people, you know, whether he was supposed to stop, you know, what's this fucking face? Oh my gosh,
Patrick Swayze's character,
or not?
Yeah.
Like the point is, like he needs to stop existing in order to really balance.
Balance everyone that he loved,
exactly.
in his own little bubble of reality,
right?
And that's where the laugh came,
right?
Which I thought was very beautiful in a weird way. It's everything kind of rubber bands back, and he's in bed right before it happens. You just see him chuckling at the prospect of it, and then things go as they should. Time did not refuse to change.
Right.
There's a funny little Easter egg to something else, and it makes perfect sense. And you don't get this your first time watching it.
No.
This is one of those films that you have to watch. Like I've seen it off and on maybe 5 times in my life. Off and on. And it took till last night for me to actually get it. Like, this is what needed to be done.
Yep.
You know what I mean? And like in my own exploration of knowledge, I've gained enough knowledge to understand the true point of this movie.
Right.
That's accepting one's fate and not being bookended onto black or white, love or fear. That doesn't matter because he loved Gretchen, but he was afraid that she died.
Right.
But at the same time, he knew what he had to do to make it right.
Right.
And there was no fear in that. It was happiness. It was contentment. It was comedy almost in a weird way. It was comedy not in the ha-ha way, but in like a Greek tragedy.
Yeah.
Almost. That he was the chosen one. Apropos to whatever multiverse future he could have possibly had.
Right.
He knew that this causality was never going to stop. Going back to what you were saying. Oh man. Would you I know we kind of just laid the whole film out, but I would absolutely.
We usually always do that anyway.
Which is fine. Cause I'm assuming you've seen this before and you're looking for more of, I would say a bit more inside baseball when it comes to these movies. But I do also feel like you need to watch this yourself because us explaining it and just the style of how we do things is very around the world. And you need to see it in action. Because I was thinking, like, I've seen this before. I can just read a synopsis and I'll be straight. But I was like, no, let me just watch it. You know what I'm saying? Just watch it. And
it's the little things.
It's the little things.
There's so many little things in this movie that really solidify your understanding.
Yes. That a Wikipedia synopsis is not going to do.
Yeah.
And it makes you appreciate the film more. It reminded me how it's almost a damn near perfect film. In its delivery and in its acting and in its, just its overall story and its message is trying to tell you. Each character, there's no wasted character in this film. Even the bullies serve a weird purpose of explaining Donnie's kind of his own mental, facility on what's triggering him from Drew Barrymore to the teacher Ratchet.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to call her out her name, but not the antagonist, but the kind of the rebel rouser, but in the opposite direction. They all hold such power in this movie. And I think without any of them, the story would have been not as rich. Mm-hmm. Oh man. Any passing thoughts on Donnie Darko? Possibly one of the most best science fiction / horror / coming of age / films ever.
I can handle fate, but not the little things. No,
Nice.
seriously. No, Donnie Darko is one of those films where you literally have no choice but to watch it again.
Yeah.
And it really just draws you in.
It draws you in.
I mean, and again, it really plays upon your understanding of, again, like you said, what's real and what's not.
Reality.
And because it really plays upon your idea of perception.
Thank you. I was thinking that last night, and I thought I was going crazy because I was going through a bit of Madman knowledge myself. It's like, my reality is not your reality, because what is reality other than brain signals that are being fed through neurons within your skin and body?
Sounds like the Matrix, but yes.
Very Matrixy. And my truth is not your truth because you're seeing it from different eyes. Donnie's truth, may it be psychosis, may it be true understanding of temporal power, is not for us to judge. Mm-hmm. It's the actual decisions he's made that bring us to the beginning, middle, and end of this film.
Right.
And it just makes you think really deep about what is reality to the next man across the table from you, or vice versa. Yeah. And it really plays with your ideals of that. It makes you just want to guess. Like you said, this movie draws you in, and then it tumbles you about to where whatever you believe in is going to be your interpretation.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Just like Robert Oppenheimer and what's his name? Damn it! Why can't I think of his name? Shit.
Professor Frank?
No.
He makes you laugh. He makes you think?
No. Never mind. Forget it.
Nice. Cool. Donnie Darko, ladies and gentlemen, 2001. If you have never seen it before, I would give this a high 4.5 out of 5. Only reason it keeps it perfect from me is just a little bit of story progression. And I am nitpicking here. And a little bit, there could have been some characters who could have been downplayed and a couple of characters who could have been, pushed forward. So I would definitely give it a 4.5 out of 5. It's damn near perfect. If you're a science fiction head, if you're a psychology major, you'll get a kick out of it because it has a lot to teach.
Yeah. I definitely give it I gave it a 4.7 out of 5. Only because, like, and again, if you've never seen this film before, you're gonna start even with us talking about it.
It's still not gonna get.
You're gonna start by giving this film probably a 2.
Yeah,
out of 5.
because it's a slow burn.
Yeah, it's a real slow burn.
It's not an attention grabber, but it's not firecracker. It's incense. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? It's not going to wake you up, but it's like a siren song. It's going to draw you in, and you're going to start, and that smell is just going to build and become more layered and detailed. And you're like, I'm gonna burn that incense again.
Yeah,
you know, it's that kind of film.
Yeah.
It's just, like you said, it draws you in slowly, and you're gonna just wake up one night and say, "Wait, what?" And you're gonna just want to watch it again. Mm-hmm. It's that kind of beauty, man. Oh man, where can we find you?
You can find me at Beer Business Bureau on Facebook, at Beer Bureau on Twitter, and Beer Business Bureau on Instagram. Nice.
You can always find this, I would say, genetic aberration of a podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spreaker, SoundCloud, YouTube, and iHeartRadio. Please leave a like, comment, and hopefully subscribe. Now, I don't know if I'm going to make this a thing, but I do kind of want to. Darren, if you were to design a beer for Donnie Darko, where do you think you would start?
Oh, actually, this will be an amalgam of things.
Yes.
It would probably.
I love this. This is cool.
This with Donnie Darko, it would shit. Okay, no, it wouldn't have to be an amalgam of things because that's really hard to do. And just like making this fucking film, and watching this film. But if anything, a beer with this movie would have to be a stout.
Absolutely, I was thinking the same thing.
And the reason why is because with a stout, especially with an imperial stout, you have to really let sip on it to really get the complexities of it.
Yes.
And stouts, like imperial stouts, are very complex unless they're by Stone, and they're not. They're just very malty.
Right.
But anyway, yeah. So it had to be an imperial stout, like really high, okay, either imperial stout or a Belgian, like some sort of
like a Belgian ale,
like a Belgian quadruple.
Nice.
Which are very complex.
Yes.
Extremely complex.
You're not pounding these with the buddies. You're sipping on this while reading a book.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yep.
You can't, this isn't like popcorn. This isn't a popcorn, beer. This is, I'm having this with a nice steak.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah, dude, I feel that.
Or a fresca pasta.
You're making me hungry.
Yeah.
After this podcast, I'm going to eat and then sleep in that order. Any passing thoughts before we close this bad boy out?
Perception is reality.
Perception is reality, ladies and gentlemen. It's not a lie if you believe it. Sorry, it has nothing to do with the show or the podcast. I just love me some Costanza. As always, I'm your host, Mike G. And I'll always ask you to look towards the skies. Look towards the skis.